Welcome to the regular meeting of the City Planning Commission. Today is Monday, October 17th. My name is Alyssa Olson. I am the president of the Planning Commission. The city will be recording and posting this meeting to the city's website and YouTube channel as a means of increasing public access and transparency. This meeting is public and subject to the Minnesota Open Meeting Law. At this time, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioners Ford, Marwa, and McGuire will be absent this evening. Commissioner Alper.
Present.
Commissioner Baxley.
Here.
Commissioner Campbell.
Here.
Commissioner Sorillo.
Present.
Commissioner Fayola.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Rainville.
Present.
That's 7 members present.
All right, we have a quorum. Next, we will proceed to the agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. There's also copies on the counter by the clerk over there. Commissioners, could I have a motion to accept the minutes from October 3rd?
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion passes and the minutes have been adopted. Our next item is to organize our agenda for this evening. I'm going to read through all of the items on the agenda, their numbers and addresses, and state whether they're slated for consent, continuation, or return or discussion. Consent items will be passed by the board. We'll be adopting staff recommendation along with any stated conditions if they're approved on the consent agenda. So if you agree with staff recommendation, you don't need to do anything. If you would like to discuss an item, please raise your hand or say something, and we will put that item on the discussion agenda. So here are the items we have this evening. Item number 4 is 150 26th Avenue Southeast. Staff is recommending this item for consent. Is there anyone here who would like to speak against staff recommendation on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll put item number 4 on consent. Item number 5, 613 and 623 Van Buren Street Northeast. We will discuss this item. Number 6 is Upper Harbor Terminal, which are all of the following addresses: 3800 First Street North, 236th Avenue North, 5136th Avenue North, 5134th Avenue North, 3360 First Street North, 3700 Washington, 3648, 3701, and 3639 Washington. Is there anyone here who would, staff is recommending this item for consent. Is there anyone here who would like to speak against staff recommendation on item number 6? All right, seeing none, we'll put item number 6 on our consent agenda. Item number 7 is 2309 Plymouth Avenue North. This item will be returned. It has been withdrawn by the applicant. And item number 8 is 1254 Russell Avenue North. This item has also been returned and it has been withdrawn by the applicant. So numbers 7 and 8 will be returned. And then item number 9, 3001 and 3003 Hennepin Avenue, and 1301 and 1309 Westlake Street. This is recommended for consent and is not part of the public hearing, so we will put item number 9 on consent. And item number 10, 4352 Zenith Avenue South. This item has been continued one more cycle to the November 1st meeting. The public hearing for this item was closed on the September 22nd meeting. So to review, we have item number 5 to discuss. We have items number 4, 6, and 9 on consent. We will continue item number 10 to the November 1st meeting, and we will return items 7 and 8. Commissioners, could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the agenda has been adopted. So first up is our consent agenda. I will open the public hearing on the consent agenda. This public hearing is only for items 4 or 6. Number 9 is not part of the public hearing. So if there's anyone here who would like to speak on items 4 or 6 before we approve the consent agenda, you can come to the podium now, state your name and address for the record, and go ahead with your comments. Sure. So the information, I'm not sure if staff has more information. Yeah, come forward.
CUPED planner. I am assigned to the projects. The applicant had proposed 2 new multiple family residential dwellings, one at 2309 Plymouth Avenue North, the other at 1254 Russell Avenue North. Sorry, I'm speaking to them, but also answering your question. The applicant has decided to withdraw the application. So the applications are no longer before the City Planning Commission or the City of Minneapolis for approval. My understanding is that they want to make some adjustments to the proposed development in light of some additional information that we have learned from Excel Energy. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Shanna.
I could, just following your comment, I'm wondering how residents would be aware if there is a new submission.
Yeah. Al, if Shanna could follow up with you guys with more information, if that would be okay with you. Yeah, and I'm sure there's ways we can get that information to you. Yeah. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak on items 4 or 6 before we close the public hearing on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the consent agenda public hearing. Commissioners, could I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion passes. If you were here for items 4, 6, or 9, those items have been approved. Good luck with your project. All right, next is our continuance agenda. It's just one item, item number 7, which will be continued to the November 1st, 2022 meeting of the Planning Commission. Could I have a motion to continue that item?
Motion to continue.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that item will be continued to the November 1st meeting. All right, let's move on to our discussion item for the evening. I have a question for the clerk. Do we need to take an official motion to return the items? Okay, so maybe we should do that. Okay, so let's see if we could have a motion to return items 7 and 8.
I'll make a motion to return items 7 and 8.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, those items have been returned, and we'll move on to our discussion item number 5, and staff is Andrew Friends.
Good afternoon, President Olson and Commissioners. Before you today are 4 land use applications for a proposed new 6-story, 64-unit residential building at 613 and 623 Van Buren Street Northeast. The subject property consists of 2 parcels between Van Buren Street and Central Avenue, north of Spring Street Northeast. These 2 parcels constitute 1 zoning lot. This property is currently occupied by a single-family home on the 613 parcel and a public alley on the 623 parcel. The alley on this block is somewhat unique in that it is established by an easement over private property rather than as dedicated public right-of-way. This property is a through lot, so it has frontage and front yards on both Van Buren as well as Central Avenue, and then frontage on Spring Street as well. It has access to the public alley that runs over the north end of the property, as well as the adjacent north-south alley on the block. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 6-story residential building containing 64 units at the property. The building would include one level of underground parking accessed from the alley to the rear. Long-term bike parking is proposed to be provided in a bike room at the first floor, and short-term bike parking would be provided adjacent to both Central and Van Buren. The building lobby would be located at the southern end of the building near the Van Buren-Spring Street intersection, with walk-up units moving north along Van Buren. The project is subject to inclusionary zoning. There are 4 land use applications before you today. The first is a rezoning from the R1A district to the R3 district, retaining the Corridor 6 built form overlay district. This rezoning application is like many of the rezoning applications that have come before you in the last 2 years, in that it's required due to a conflict between the existing primary zoning district and the applicable land use and built form policy guidance for the site. So this site has the future land use designation of neighborhood mixed use, and the built form designation and built form overlay district of Corridor 6. The R1A district limits the maximum number of units in an individual structure to 3, and the R3 district, which is what they're seeking, is the lowest intensity district that allows 4 or more units in an individual structure. The applicant is also seeking 2 setback variances. So this property, as I mentioned, is a through lot with required front yards adjacent to both Van Buren as well as Central. The applicable district minimum setback here in the Corridor 6 district with underlying residential zoning is 15 feet. However, on the Van Buren side, they're subject to an increased established front yard of 28.9 feet in depth, and that setback is drawn off of the adjacent home to the north. So they're seeking variances to both of these front yards adjacent to Van Buren from 28.9 feet to 15 feet, matching the district minimum, and from 15 to 5.3 adjacent to Central. The applicant is also seeking site plan review. The project as proposed meets or exceeds all of the site plan review standards except for the building placement standard adjacent to Spring Street Northeast. We are recommending granting alternative compliance given the constraints imposed by the unusual lot shape and the narrow depth adjacent to Spring Street. In addition to the 4 land use applications that are before you today, there are also 2 administrative land use applications associated with this project. The project as proposed requires 1 FAR premium to increase the FAR from 3 to 3.1. They are meeting the requirement or the standard for the enclosed parking FAR premium. The project also requires a minor TDMP, and that is attached to the staff report for reference. They're proposing to exceed the required TDM points through the limited vehicle parking, the pricing of parking, and the transit information TDM strategies. There have been a significant number of public comments on this proposal. Some of those were attached to the published staff report with the agenda, and then some others you should have received today. So I'm happy to go into detail on any of the findings if you would like me to, if you have any questions, but we have found that the proposed project meets all of the required findings, and staff recommends approval of all 4 applications subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Rainville?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I do. In reading the remarks from the neighbors, I do have some questions based on what they sent in. So first of all, it's our understanding that a variance cannot be granted for economic hardship reasons only. What is your response to that question?
President Olson, Commissioner Rainville, that's correct. The first variance finding requires practical difficulties due to circumstances unique to the site that are not economic in nature. As outlined in the staff report, this is a very unique site that has uncommon restrictions related to its required yards and its developable area. So, this property is a five-sided lot that is roughly triangular in shape. So it's about 129 feet in depth at the northern end and only about 63 feet in depth at the southern end. It has two front yards as a through lot. And then one of those front yards is increased to almost double the regular district minimum front yard setback. If you look in the staff report, there's some information about the percentage of the property that is occupied by the required yards, as well as the alley easement compared to what would be occupied by required yards on a typical parcel of the same size. And so staff has found that the shape of the lot, having two front yard setbacks, the increased depth of the front yard setback, and the alley easement all together constitute a practical difficulty in complying with the full required yards.
And what would you say to the observation that solar panels would be prohibited on the house directly to the west or north of it?
Commissioner Rainville, a six-story building is allowed here by right. That's what the comp plan guidance is, and that's what the built form overlay district that applies to the site is. And so the question with the variance is what the impact of the proposed reduced front yards is on the adjacent properties, not what the impact of a six-story building on the property generally is.
So I'm sorry, I don't think I understood you. One of the residents wrote in that solar panels would no longer be feasible on the house next due to the height. So is that true or not true?
Commissioner Rainville, I haven't done that analysis. I would expect that is probably true, but the height is allowed. So they're allowed to build a six-story building. The variances allow them to, or would authorize the building closer to both street frontages.
Okay, thank you. And again, another question from a resident. The proposed FAR prohibits planting of new trees. Is that true?
Commissioner Rainville, I'm not sure exactly what is being referred to there. This project includes and exceeds the tree requirement under site plan review. There may be some areas where, due to the shadowing of the building, it is less feasible for a tree to reach maturity than it would if this building weren't built. But this project is complying with the site plan review standards for landscaping and is providing more trees than are required.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff before we move forward with our public hearing? All right, thank you, Andrew. If the applicant team would like to come forward, I'll open the public hearing and invite the applicant team first.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name's Carol Lansing. I'm an attorney at Faegre Drinker, Biddle and Reith. It keeps changing. I'm here making introductions tonight. I've been working with the development team on the applications because Mark Evikevich and Danny Perkins are not able to be here, both for unexpected family reasons, and they do send their regrets for that. They also asked me to let you know that they are, of course, sympathetic to the understandable concerns of the neighbors about this change. And they heard them both at the neighborhood meeting and in the letters that they've seen. But those concerns really relate to the development that is allowed and called for under the 2040 plan and the Corridor 6 guidance. They are willing to work, of course, with the city and neighbors on other types of concerns like traffic management or parking management on the street. And Andrew, of course, did a great job giving in his presentation and his report. And we think that with respect to the variances, it's very clear that there are practical difficulties in developing on this particular lot because of its unique shape and circumstances that justify those yard variances. Ben here with DJR is going to, wants to focus just a little bit on some of the changes that were made in response to the comments received at Committee of the Whole and answer any other questions you have.
Hello, Commissioners. Ben Potachik with DGR Architecture. As Carol said, I'm just going to briefly highlight the changes we made since the Committee of the Whole meeting. So one thing we incorporated was there was a discussion about the placement of the lobby and other active functions. So we moved the lobby and the main entrance to the residential building to the south end of the property so that it was closer to Spring Street and Central intersection. And we also moved more active amenity spaces in the building to line Central Avenue so that that would activate that street frontage more. And then some of the residential units were moved to the other side on Van Buren, so they all line up on that side. And at those unit entrances, our intent was to enhance the pedestrian experience with fencing in those yards and creating some nice landscape spaces so that those respond to the pedestrian and sidewalk environment. And then we did additional things on the south end and along Central Avenue to activate those spaces, including at the main entry, we added some space for seating. We added some potential public art. Architecturally, we added canopies all along the public sides of the building, but especially at that main entry on Spring Street and Central Avenue to provide architectural interest and some enhanced landscaping in all of those areas. We also have a bike lounge facing Central Avenue that's not only a space for storage, but a space for fixing bikes and actual space to be in there too if people want to work on bikes together. And that has an entry out onto Central Avenue. So our intent was activation and interest on that corner so that this was a noticeable building and interacted well with the community around it. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Alper has a question.
Thank you. I just want it to be noted that the Committee of the Whole was on, I believe, August 18th, 2022, and not September 18th, 2022, as was stated throughout the packet.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. All right, any other questions for the applicant? All right, I'm not seeing any, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on with our public hearing now. So if there's anyone else here who would like to speak on this item, you can come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and proceed with your comments, please.
Hi,
Hi.
we're back. My name is Sarah Jones. I live at the property directly next to this lot at 625 Van Buren. So, I've really been wondering, asking myself a lot of questions. Like, what could I have done differently is one. In 2018, I engaged with the 2040 plan. We volunteered with SANA. In 2019, a surveyor is on my lot. I come out, I ask him what he's doing. He says, it's none of your business. Who can I contact? I contact the city. I contact my council member who says to me, don't worry about it. There was a mistake. Corridor 6 is a mistake. Who's Heather Worthington? I Google Heather Worthington. Oh, okay, she's pretty legit. He lays out exactly that I don't need to worry about this. And I wouldn't be here if it was Interior 3 and they were proposing something for Interior 3, because I'm also wondering, why is development so either or? Why is it either you're for it or you're a NIMBY? Why can't it be and, right? Like, increased density does provide access to housing, and it can be thoughtfully designed. You know, the 2040 plan adopted this, but didn't do zoning studies. So allowing a variance on this property, yes, it is a unique lot, and I do not believe that they've met criteria 1 and 3. This 6-story building makes such a huge impact versus if you allowed a variance for a duplex or triplex or fourplex for Van Buren Street, okay, right? I'm only here talking about Van Buren Street. I'm not blanketing this about everything 2040. The applicant has not proven that something else can't be built here. And corridor 6, I agree, they do have the legal right under corridor 6, but corridor 6 is 2 to 6 stories. It doesn't have to be 6 stories, and then you don't have to ask for more. It's like me saying, I just need more than just this podium to speak to you. I need more. I don't quite understand why. There could be something built on this lot, and it doesn't need to block our already financed solar project on our home. We would like to also do something for climate. We would like to eventually plug in our car. We would like to power our house by solar. We can't do that now. Staff states that the proposed variance will not be injurious to the use or enjoyment of my property, but he has not given any evidence to this. There will be 5 balconies directly looking into our son's bedroom, okay? Yes. When we had the community meeting with the developers, they mentioned, well, there's 25 other windows. Those windows actually just look at the side of our home, but the 5 balconies on the north side to central do look directly into my son's home, and I'd like them to be removed. That is injurious to the enjoyment of our property. The applicant is proposing parking, but it's really not enough for our residential street. You know, I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. I can't walk there. There is the good clinics within walking distance to my house, but they don't take my insurance. I do need a car. We have 1 car. If my son is sick, I have to put him in a car and take him to a doctor's appointment. So you cannot argue with me and say that all 64 plus people who will be living at this proposed development won't have cars. Where are they gonna park when there's only 19 parking spots? And they're putting in 19 parking spots to get more because they were already 1,000 square feet over what they could be, right? They're asking to exceed the FAR. It's just they keep asking for more. Why can't they just develop something on that property under corridor 6 that just fits? Why does there have to be more? We have a lot of concerns. I don't want to take up more time because more of my neighbors showed up. This is not an either or. This is an and. And we keep showing up with these developers, right? But at this point, you have actually approved a development of 24 units at 635, and you're potentially going to be approving a development of 64 on a really narrow residential street that does not have a bus on it. I just think we can do better as a city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. If there's anyone else who would like to come forward, we try to avoid repeating things, so thank you.
I'm gonna hear it again anyway. I'm the other half of the duo of that house. I mean, I think we already know that Andrew has admitted that it is injurious to our house, so obviously his findings can't be clear. Can we ask that question? How can he admit that it is injurious to my home, me unable to put solar on my house, but still meet criteria 3? The other thing is, number 1, look, we had the community meeting. All the developer said is another building is not marketable. Another building is not feasible. They're not required to only build this size and shape. Ben, their architect, I asked, is another building architecturally able to be built on this? And he's like, yeah, you can build a different building, right? This is about the amount of money that they're going to make for this. I do not want to, I'm gonna stick with my wife on the and, right? We need smart development in this city, but 400 square foot market rate apartments aren't gonna get people out of the quarry encampment. This isn't the silver bullet that's going to fix it. So I'm looking you guys, because they're not interested in living with peace with their neighbors, to help us live in peace. And the last part that's not a repeat, if you guys haven't done the math, if you grant these variances, that's over 250,000 cubic feet of space that's built in public right-of-way. A third of the building is built in public right-of-way, right? It's 14 feet on the front, 10 feet on the back. Do the math, right? That's a lot of space. If you're going to give up that much, it better be 50% affordable housing, right? That's public space. That's what variances are. So that is injurious to the community. That is injurious to our house, right? And so if we have the conversation, let's say a 6-story isn't gonna prevent me. Like, you're talking about an additional 24 feet of width that's gonna cast shadow on my sunlight, on my house. Give me a plan where it's not that wide. and let me have my solar people look at it. This is injurious to my house. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Andrew, could you confirm the proposed plans are not building in the public right-of-way? That's correct?
What's the variance? It's a public right-of-way.
President Olson, the required yards are not public right-of-way.
Okay.
They're private property.
Thank you. Okay.
Wait a minute, what's the purpose of a variance? You're directly addressing it. What is the purpose of a setback? What is the purpose of a setback?
Sir, we're going to move on.
What
And
is the purpose of a setback?
would you like to answer that question? Thank you.
Sure, President Olson. So we have the intent of the ordinance for regulating required yards is discussed in the staff responses to the variance. But in general, the purpose of a setback is to provide separation between buildings and uses, to provide for open space, and for access to light and air, and to prevent disorderly development. But it's not public right-of-way.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? You can come forward now, state your name and address for the record, and proceed with your comments, please.
Good afternoon. I'm John McFadden, 606 Van Buren, exactly across the street to the west. Just because something can be built, should it be built? It's a valid question. It's not rhetorical. Because something meets some requirements, should it be built? This looks so sterile on the screen here, but if you look at the right side, that's Central Avenue, okay? You're coming south, and you're going to turn right on Spring Street. Do you see that little V? That little V is about 50 feet. So when you want to turn on the Spring and then turn again right and go north on Van Buren, you're doing so for 50 feet. They put the curbs out really far because across the street is townhomes for people in scooters. That didn't used to be there. It used to be 2 cars could occupy and turn right as you went out of there and went south on Central. It's impossible now. So we're going to stick a car right there. It's 1 car length. If somebody wants to go south and turn onto Van Buren, that happens all the time. And then the people are waiting in line, and they don't make the light. They're pissed because they didn't have enough time to go to north on Central. These things are complicated because you're not there, but if you saw it, it would be very apparent to you how injurious it is to this neighborhood. We are all, I'm shaking with emotion because who represents our neighborhood? Who represents the livability of this street? Mike, help us. Who represents? Where do we turn to get relief? I know these things. I'm not trying to be emotional at anybody personally, but this is a silly project put in a great location for something that's a 4-plex, a 3-story building, something that's going to fit. We already have approved. In fact, I don't ever see anything shot down here. This is my 3rd time here. So it'd be good to see some kind of accommodations for people that talk to you. That would be awesome. But I'm going to get shadowed now a lot. My house is directly to the west of this property at 606 Van Buren. It's been there for 122 years. I've paid lots of property taxes in there since 1988. It's going to hurt my property value. It's going to hurt my tenants who already can't park there. We have people parking big trucks and trailers who are working craft people. There's 2 of those now on the block. They take up about 3.5 car lengths apiece. During the winter, it is almost impassable now with the amount of traffic that is on there. I know that that's not in the 2040 plan to look at traffic, but I'm asking you, just like she said, It's not an either or, it's an and. We want development. All of us that live over there know we live in a prized neighborhood. But 6 stories, that amount of traffic, I wish that just one of you would make the drive and meet one of us there and see during the middle of the day what I'm talking about, and at night when it's full of cars. We can't just live in a dreamland that all development is okay because by the letter or by the book it's okay. That's a fact. We need relief. We need someone to be reasonable and represent for us our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Would someone else like to come forward, state your name and address for the record, and proceed with your comments, please?
Hi, my name is Marie Kent. I live at 741 Van Buren Street, down the street, and I would like to talk about light and air. If you look at that picture, it has, in the top left corner, it looks like there's just some nice trees. What's missing from that picture is the community garden. One of the most wonderful things of our neighborhood is the community garden and Community Commons Park that's just across the street. I live right there. We have a very green neighborhood, and I love that. So when I hear about the setbacks that were discussed and that it's removing the light and air, as has been stated, I worry, because as this development goes, so goes the rest of the street, and we know that because of that typo that wasn't fixed, and so now this is Corridor 6 instead of Interior 3. These very tall developments are happening, and they're going boom, 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 boom. So what happens to our garden? What happens to, I like having my kids playing in my backyard, and right now there's lots of light, and I have plants everywhere, but I can't do that if my neighbors move, because what's to prevent another variance for another 6-story that is legally allowed, that goes all the way to the edge? That's injurious to my neighborhood and our community. So what makes our neighborhood so prized? The fact that there are setbacks. I would love to have something that matches Interior 3. Like, please give us a quad or a triplex, family-friendly, that includes places for children to play. Children can't play in this development. It's too dangerous, and I worry for their safety. And so right now, they could walk up, but is that going to stay that way? I worry. I very much would like to keep our neighborhood green. Please change this development so that it can. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to come up and speak? State your name and address for the record and proceed with your comments.
Chris Meyer, 601 6th Street Southeast. I live a few blocks away from where this project is, and I came to speak in support of the project generally and the setback variances specifically. One of the most important things that the 2040 plan did is it allowed for more transit-oriented development, and this is what that project is. It's right across the street from a high-frequency bus line that will become a bus rapid transit line when the F line comes in. And it's really important that the city allows for more people to live close to transit. If we're weighing the climate impacts of a project like this, it's certainly in favor of the project, easily. One of the most important things that you can do to reduce carbon pollution is to enable more people to live in the city and specifically close to transit. So previous speakers have said, we would welcome a triplex or a fourplex. Well, that means 60 people at least wouldn't be allowed to be there. So it's a lot of people that they're saying have to live somewhere else, which functionally means either the suburbs or the streets. So to the extent that housing is pushed out to the suburbs, that means that people are going to be driving a lot more. They live on much larger lots. It's expanding suburban sprawl. Like, the climate impact is huge. Like, one of the most important things that you can do in order to reduce carbon pollution is to allow more infill development. So, this project and this stretch here, I know there's a proposed amendment to downzone this entire area. This is really going to be a test of whether the Planning Commission and the City Council are going to stand by the 2040 plan's transit-oriented development policies. I hope you do. Specifically to the variance requests, this is exactly what those are for. You have an unusually shaped lot, and the staff mentioned that the percentage was in the report. I think the percentage of the land taken up is really important. It's 62.6% if the variances aren't granted. So 62.6% of the land is unusable. That's unreasonable. It's not the intent of the ordinances. So I think it's extremely reasonable to grant those. And I also think it's especially appropriate on Central Avenue in particular, because when you have a lot of space between the road and the drivers, it makes them drive faster. So when you have more obstacles, like trees and buildings and other things, that actually slows people down. So when the building is closer to the street, you have a more pedestrian and safer street. So I hope that you follow the staff recommendations and grant the approvals. Thank you.
Can I speak to the issue about public transit?
Everyone gets to speak once. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come up and speak on this item before we close the public hearing? If so, come forward, state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Lonnie Sternberg, and I live at 733 Van Buren Street Northeast. And I'm here today to specifically oppose the development down the street. I do not support the variance request for the 15-foot setback, as this would negatively impact our neighborhood and drastically impact the accessibility, safety, and aesthetics of our established neighborhood. At a community meeting a week or two ago, we asked them specifically, or they stated specifically that the setback for the neighboring house was unusual and deeply set back, and that's why they needed the variance or the setback for the property. So the neighbors actually went and measured all the setbacks of the houses on Van Buren on the 600 and 700 block, and 80% of the setbacks are actually 20 feet or greater. So what's really unsettling to me is that they're being deceitful in what they're telling the community, because there really is there is a setback of 30 feet when they're saying that there's an unusual setback. Let's see here, what else do we have? If these setbacks and variances are approved, this will have a detrimental impact to our neighborhood due to the increased density of our quiet residential street. One thing that I want to point out, and it's on the map, people have mentioned before that, that intersection of Van Buren, Spring, and Central is a very funky intersection. And when you're going to increase that type of housing with 65 units, what kind of impact is that going to have? Bikers, pedestrians, traffic. So the community would like a major TDMP study, if that's an option. Approving these variances would only benefit the developer, and that is why I'm asking you to deny the site plan and uphold the integrity of the 2040 plan. It was my understanding that an idea of the 2040 plan is so you don't have to ask for all these variances. I don't understand why these developers can't develop a building that's within the guidelines. Why do they need, the extra 15 feet? And to me, it just shows greed, and they need to, take away from the community in order to get something that they want. There's no reason they can't develop on this property. It doesn't have to be a triangular-shaped building on a triangular-shaped lot. So I'm asking you to deny the site plan.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward? State your name and address for the record, please.
Christina Bush, 728 Van Buren Street Northeast. I oppose this. I'm just going to read this. What is the limit to how many units are being built? The only people taking advantage of the 2040 plan seem to be the big developers. The zoning was a mistake, and it wasn't rectified. It was supposed to be rectified, and it wasn't rectified. So now we have this. So before it was meant to be rectified, but it wasn't. So just keep that in mind, because we're not just complaining about nothing. We are not opposed to buildings. We're not opposed to any building. We're opposed to this building. It's way too high. It's a unique site. You need to see the site. Everybody has said how unique it is. I invite you all to come out and see this site and see how unique it is. For us who live in the neighborhood, come on out and see this unique, sir, unique, you need these variances, this unique site. Come out and see it, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? State your name and address for the record, please.
See, my name is Bobby Orgo. I live at 604 Monroe Street, just like a couple minutes walk from this project. I just want to say that I actually approve this plan. I mean, it is a weird lot. It's very weird. It's a triangle. It's got setbacks because of kind of on a corner between two busy roads. And I know that there's a lot of issues with this intersection. I just want to tell everybody that Hennepin County is looking at redoing Central Avenue, and I'm pretty sure they would take any consideration to fix this intersection, as it's very ugly and it does get a lot of backups. So I don't know if our city, the city of Minneapolis, would be the one to possibly fix this intersection, or Hennepin County would be the one that would fix this during the new proposals. As for other reasons I approve this, I think this gentleman over here said most of the reasons that I approve this. We need more housing in this area. I wouldn't be able to rent here if we had more affordable housing. I basically scavenged around trying to find a place to live when I moved here, and it was hard to find a place affordable for anything I was trying to live on. I just got lucky. And if we keep restricting more housing and apartments in this area, we're going to turn into San Francisco, LA, or any other unaffordable city where it becomes all homes and no renters can afford to live anywhere, and you're living hours out of the city. We need to start moving forward as a city. St. Anthony East is actually a pretty unique neighborhood. I never thought this Minneapolis would be so suburban until I came to this part of the city. You look at Minneapolis pictures, you think of uptown, you think of the south side where it's dense, lots of apartments, a lot of condos, things like that. But St. Anthony East is becoming a more dense area and a more popular area. And with more rapid transit coming to the area, we need to start thinking about the future of the city. Houses are great, but it's not going to house enough people to afford to live here anymore. And unless you want to keep suburban sprawling over to Stillwater or up to White Bear Lake or all the way to the surrounding counties, I think having more dense housing is the best way to do it, because having more dense housing is more environmentally friendly than sprawling hundreds of miles outside the cities. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? All right, I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, is there any discussion, or would someone like to make a motion? Sorry, Commissioner Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, here we are again. We have a terrible decision in front of us because it's going to create winners and losers. The 2040 plan has done that. It's divided so much of our community. Commissioners, we heard the gentleman from Johnson Street say that phrase about a month ago when we were winners and losers. And that's what they're trying to create up on Johnson Street. That's what's going to happen down here on Van Buren. And we have to take into account that the last council member in this ward and the planning department head, Heather Worthington, agreed that it was a mistake to turn this into a corridor 6, and it should be an interior 3. That's what the neighborhoods agreed to. That's what they all proposed. And it just didn't happen. To me, that is really bad governance, that a city would not honor, that an elected official would not honor the word, that a staff person would not honor their word. And so here we are again. And we did vote down that 635 Van Buren, and it got upheld. So we kind of see what the path is going to be. But I just, in full conscience, cannot vote for this. I have to stand with the neighbors and with the promise that was made to them. So I'm going to make a motion to deny the site plan review on the basis that it is not an economic hardship.
All right, just the site plan review, or okay. Do we don't need like alternate findings to deny a site plan review, or do we?
I'm stumped on the findings for the site plan review. I mean, in this case, the project meets all of the site plan review requirements except for one item. So you would need to be looking at the alternative compliance that's required. In this case, it's the rezoning that establishes the development, and then it's the setbacks.
Right.
So we're taking these out of order.
Yeah.
So I misspoke then. I would say that let's vote on these item by item. I make a motion to vote on these A, B, C, and D.
So would you like to maybe withdraw your motion and start with A?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right.
Withdraw my motion.
So a motion from Commissioner Rainville to deny the rezoning. We would want to come up with some findings, whatever those are. Commissioner Faola?
Hillary, I have a question for you. In the comments from one of the neighbors, there was rezone criteria, whether the amendment is consistent with the applicable policies of the comprehensive plan. Finding, the applicant relies on the 2040 plan for findings under the criteria, and it looks like the city has accepted and approved applications without doing the required zoning studies under implementation in the 2040 plan. Can you clarify that?
So the policy that is on record is the 2040 plan. So the Corridor 6 is the policy that's on record for this site. That is what you're being asked to do. The rezoning is to bring the zoning into compliance with our comp plan, and that's what this rezoning request is doing, is bringing the zoning into compliance with the comp plan, which is something we're required to do. And so this project is ahead of our citywide rezoning study, which will be coming forward in Q1 of next year. But this is to allow development to get started in advance of the citywide rezoning.
So we've had some presentations from staff about the rezoning study as it's going through the process. And it's, has to happen after every comprehensive plan is adopted. Every city does it. So we're just in that in-between period right now.
So you would need to make findings that the zoning would not be in compliance with the comprehensive plan policies. And so Andrew has written very solid findings on this. And so we would need you to come up with different findings that say this is not supportive or not in compliance with the comp plan. And Commissioner Olson, excuse me, or Chair Olson, I've been asked was there a second on that motion from Commissioner Rainville?
I don't think there was, but we might have one. Is there a second on the motion? Right. I'm not seeing any.
Okay.
So is there any discussion, or would anyone like to make an alternate motion? Commissioner Faola?
I have a question back to the implementation or the zoning study. So the 2040 plan was passed 2 years ago, but to back up the zoning, there needs to be a study, but the study isn't going to be done until 2023. So if the 2023 study has differences, then we would operate by those differences, but they're not in place at the moment. Is that what I'm understanding?
We have the current zoning classifications that we have right now. The code development team within CPED is working on revising the zoning code to bring it into conformance with the new land use rezoning classifications that will be created as a result of the 2040 plan being being written. So
that has happened. And so now we are writing the code, Commissioner Fiola, to bring it into conformance and compliance with the comp plan. And so our zoning code is being rewritten to match comp plan, not comp plan being redone, not this year at least, to match zoning. And so you need to make findings based on our current zoning classifications that we have, that is in conformance with the comprehensive plan policy that is on the books today, which is the Corridor 6.
I'm not sure I understand, but thank you.
Can I take an opportunity to clarify?
Yeah.
So I think what I'm hearing you say, Hillary, is that in a couple of months, there's going to be a land use zoning reclassification opportunity for us to update current land use zones to what the comprehensive plan says. And what Andrew has found here today is that reclassifying the land use for this particular property is doing it 6 months in advance of what that land use zoning thing is going to say in 6 months when we see it.
Yes, in 6 months, it could be a very different zoning classification. I am not on the code development team, and I'm not apprised of what those are. I don't know what the last update to the commission was. But yes, this is working with the zoning classifications today. Any R3 to R6 zoning district would be in conformance with the comprehensive plan because they have the same allowance for this development. So we are rezoning, or not, the request is to go to R3, which is compliant with allowing multiple family housing and then allowing it to be up to that 6 stories.
I don't know if that clarified it or not for you. Okay.
All right. Commissioner Fiola?
So I understand that within the 2040 plan, it's not required to do a traffic study, but is that something that we can ask for prior to ruling?
So there was a minor travel demand management plan done for this development. That is what's required for the project, and they have met and satisfied the requirements. Andrew talks about it on the 3rd or 4th page of the staff report, where he calls out and identifies which strategies have been applied for this project. And so that is an administrative review that is done by staff. And so that has been approved. So we have done a traffic study for the development. There are only 20 parking spaces in the building, or 19 parking spaces in the building, and Public Works did not find that that would create conflict within the neighborhood.
All right. I'm not seeing any other raised hands at the moment. So I'll say, I've said it before, but we, as the Planning Commission, have our comprehensive plan and the associated zoning, and that's how we determine the appropriateness of a project. And in this case, the zoning is simply to bring this site in compliance with the comprehensive plan. And I think that these variances are justified and laid out well by staff. It is a unique site, as we've said. And I think that for this type of building on Central Avenue, where we have frequent transit.
It's on Van Buren.
I understand.
The city address says where it's at. We don't know where
Okay.
it's at. That's not our.
I think that this is an appropriate request, and I would vote to approve as recommended by staff. Is there anyone who would like to, Commissioner Baxley? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve project per staff findings.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Commissioner Rainville.
So it's very clear that this has the votes to pass. But what I want to say is everybody is right on this. The 2 gentlemen who spoke in favor are right, because we do need more housing in the city. You're absolutely right. The neighbors are right, because they were not told the truth. And they are right in saying they're going to be impacted adversely. There's just no way around that. That's the truth. You cannot deny the truth. And the developer is right. I'll give them credit. They're only doing what the law allows them to do. So we have to vote our our conscience, we have to vote the law, and I am going to be voting against this project.
Weren't you going to separate them out, though? The variances versus the site plan?
I didn't get a second on that.
That's correct. Commissioner Alper?
Mike, could we make it a one-way street at least?
I'm sorry, the public hearing is closed.
Thank you, Chair Olson. So, okay, this question of Corridor 6 has come up before. And what I've heard from staff, and that's who we go to as our resource here for the latest information on the status of the comprehensive plan, on zoning matters, and we have been told by staff that this is the correct designation. So I just I want to tell all of you who are here today that I would like to debunk the misinformation that is out there, and if that is the case, if you feel that this is incorrect, I suggest that you do a public data request, because we as commissioners can only operate with the best available information that we have, and that is the information that we have from staff. So I would also like to take a moment and ask about a couple of the other comments that we've received regarding shadows and views. And I would just ask Andrew, when are shadows and when are shadows not guided for projects? When do projects have to do shadow studies, or when does that come into play? And same thing with views. Are views in code?
President Olson, Commissioner Alper, we do require shadow studies for most projects that are applying for full site plan review. The exception would be very small projects that are just barely triggering that, or are triggering that without a large addition to a new building. So a project like this, they were required to prepare and submit shadow studies as part of their application materials. But the role of shadowing and views when looking at the findings for land use applications is relatively limited. In a situation like this, they are not requesting to increase height, and so if they were, which they could apply for an administrative height increase here. If they were applying for an administrative height increase, then we would look at shadowing and the impacts of shadowing. But building a building within the height that is allowed by right in the built form district, we don't take shadowing into account. There are some and views are similar. Views are really only relevant for certain types of applications, and they're generally related to views of and from public spaces, not private property. So a height increase in the shoreland overlay district, or conditional use permits that have an impact on views of important public spaces can be relevant to land use applications.
Great, thanks for that information. So I just want to say I heard the comments about traffic. I wrote down full of cars, and I guess I would ask the development team if you could speak a little bit more to your, if that's okay with the chair, to how you are, I know you did a TDM plan, a minor one, but how are you helping your tenants take transit? May I ask? I would like to ask you.
So the TDM plan minor that we applied for had 3 different points. One was the unbundling of parking. So people are not, if they rent an apartment, the parking is not included with that. It's separated out. So that encourages, people to not have cars. the access to transit itself and the future high-speed bus route here is, I think, a amenity to this building and to its future tenants. And there will be a transit info board in the lobby to encourage use of that and encourage efficient use of that. Then the other thing really is the limitation of parking, which were the most points that we got towards the TDMP plan. We have less than half parking for units, and that in itself is encouraging people to live here who are more reliant on transit, whether that is public transit or biking. We have a bike lounge that exceeds the requirements for this site, and so tenants will be encouraged to bike through the use of that and the connection of that lounge to the street, and also additional short-term bike parking in front of the building.
Thank you for that. Did you consider offering transit passes for your tenants?
That's not something that we've considered yet, but it's something that we could. I know
Okay.
that's another way to achieve points for the
Yeah.
TMP plan.
I mean, I think that would help some of the concerns that we've heard here today. Metro Transit has a residential transit pass. It's $14 a month per unit. So I think it's something, we hear frequently about traffic. So I would encourage you to do that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other discussion? Otherwise, the motion on the table is to adopt staff recommendation for this item. All right, seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Baxley.
Aye.
Commissioner Campbell.
Aye.
Commissioner Sodrillo.
Aye.
Commissioner Faola.
Abstain.
Commissioner Rainville.
Abstain.
That's 4 yeas, 1 nay, and 1 abstention.
And
Oh, excuse me, Campbell and Nelson.
One more aye. Thank
One more
you.
aye. Okay, my apologies. So that's 5 yeas, 1 nay, and 1 abstention. Thank you.
All right, that motion passes and staff recommendation has been adopted. That was our last item.
You're voting for people to be able to see my 6-year-old room. Awesome. Awesome.
That was our last item for the evening. Is there any update from staff?
No.
Thank you.
Except for we have cow on Thursday. at
Cow on
4:30.
Thursday. All right, thank you. Anything else, commissioners, before we adjourn? All right, if not, and without objection, I'll declare this meeting adjourned. Our next Planning Commission meeting will be on a Tuesday, which is not normal, Tuesday, November 1st, and our next Committee of the Whole meeting will be this Thursday, October 20th. Thank you.
Thank you.